Welcome to Boy Overcomes Storm. I'm Henry Albert, the storyteller of haunting tales that touch the heart. The darkness isn't as scary, if you're willing to listen. Like and subscribe to join me in uncovering stories never told before. Story 1. Pray for Deliverance. On the night of the 30th of April, the cool breeze blew through the broken windows on the hilltop, carrying the smell of mold and moss. The old house, abandoned for decades, appeared in the white mist, its walls rotten, its tiled roof tilted as if it was about to collapse at any moment. Henry, the adventure-loving backpacker, passed through the rusty iron gate, flashlight and camera in hand. The wooden door creaked open with a sigh, as if to warn, "Don't come in." Inside, the large living room was dark, with only cobwebs hanging all over the ceiling and deep cracks on the walls. On the old wooden dining table, a few pieces of broken porcelain plates were scattered, like the last meal left unfinished. Suddenly, a soft whisper sounded from the dark corner. "Who is here?" Henry chuckled, thinking it was the wind, but his heart still tightened. He quickly took a few photos and followed the long hallway. Each step made the steps creak as if the verdict echoed under his heels. On the second floor, a bedroom door suddenly opened. The moonlight shone through the crack, shining directly on the bed covered with yellowish-white sheets, revealing a vague figure lying there. Henry crept forward, his heart pounding. From inside the room, the soft sobbing of a child could be heard. "Mom, Mom," the sorrowful voice seemed to scratch at his heart. On the hallway wall, an old family photo was hung crookedly, parents and a 7-year-old girl. The father was cold, the mother was sad, the girl smiled gently, but the corner of the photo was torn, covering her legs. Below the frame, the handwriting was smudged, "Happy family, forever." The cry led the way. Henry opened the rotten wooden door. In the corner of the room, the girl in the photo was huddled, hugging her pillow, tears rolling down her pale cheeks. She didn't say anything, just raised her hand to point at the wooden floor. Henry bent down and discovered a small wooden box. Opening it, he found a yellowed letter. "My dear child, I apologize for not protecting you. If anyone finds this letter, please bring my soul back to the light." Discovering a secret blurred with tears. Suddenly, the door behind Henry slammed shut. He was startled, stepped back but tripped over a stool, falling down the stairs. His eyes went dark. When he woke up, Henry was lying on the cold cement floor. It was already dawn outside, the fog was thick. The house was once again silent, without a sound. He staggered out the gate, looked back at the second floor. The window was half open, the yellowed cloth curtain swayed like a small hand waving. Back in the village, Henry went to the house of the old man who looked after the village temple, the only person who still remembered the old story. The old man sadly told, the father in the photo had killed his wife and children out of jealousy, the little girl died tragically, the mother hugged her child's body and committed suicide. Since then, the child's soul has lingered in the abandoned house, the sound of crying and the white shadow of her shirt still lingering in the night. Following the prayer in the letter, Henry brought the wooden box and the letter up the hill, placing them in the middle of the dilapidated altar. He lit incense, praying sincerely for the girl's soul to be liberated. The afternoon wind suddenly blew, the sigh echoed and then gradually faded. The yellow curtain fell, covering the decayed family photo. A faint light like a small hand waving goodbye then disappeared. The house returned to absolute silence. Since that night, there has been no more whispering, no more white shadow passing through the hallway. But if anyone dares to venture up the hill when the moon is clear and the wind is cool, they can still see a faint light behind the second floor window, like the grateful smile of a little soul that has finally found peace. Story 2. The Haunted Reef. A group of 5 young friends, Alex 18 years old, Lily 17 years old, James 19 years old, Emma 18 years old, and Ryan 17 years old, were avid fans of mysterious stories. One day, they heard about an old cinema located on the outskirts of the city, which had been abandoned for many years. This cinema was not only a favorite destination for movie lovers but also a place filled with eerie tales. Local people spoke of strange occurrences in the cinema at night, such as the projector running by itself, flickering lights, and occasionally, shadowy figures appearing on the screen. However, no one dared to go near the cinema after it had been closed down. Intrigued by these stories, the group decided to investigate the truth about the place. They made plans to visit the cinema on a dark night. When they arrived, the cold and silence of the place overwhelmed them. The cinema doors were locked, but Emma quickly found a small gap through which they could slip inside. Once inside, the air was cold and eerie. The wooden chairs were worn and dusty, and the old projector sat in silence. Everything seemed abandoned for a long time. They walked along the rows of seats, exploring other screening rooms, but they found no one. Ryan, always the curious one, suggested trying to turn on the projector, though they weren't sure if it would still work. When the projector began to run, a strange scene appeared on the screen. It was unlike any movie they had ever seen. The images on the screen were blurry and chaotic, as though some force was interfering with the film. Suddenly, they saw a family sitting in the cinema, but their faces were distorted and unclear. The characters in the film began to speak, but the sound was more like an echo from another world. Unintelligible words came from the projector, and it felt like they were trying to convey a message. A ghostly figure appeared in one of the scenes, walking across the cinema. The group was startled, but none of them dared to leave. Alex, the smartest of the group, realized that this was no ordinary film. They were witnessing a supernatural phenomenon. As they continued to explore, they discovered an old notebook in a drawer in the projection room. This notebook belonged to Daniel Quinn, a director of the cinema in the past. Daniel Quinn was the creator of the film they were watching. In the notebook, Daniel Quinn wrote about a special movie he had been working on during the last years before the cinema closed down. This film was never finished, and according to Daniel Quinn, it was supposed to help free the trapped souls in the cinema. The notebook indicated that as long as the movie remained unfinished, the souls of those who died in the cinema could not escape. These souls were trapped within the scenes of the film, unable to find peace. The strange scenes they were watching were the unfinished parts of that very film. Ryan, more curious than ever, decided to play the next reel. Suddenly, they saw a scene with an image of a family sitting in the cinema. But this time, their faces were clearer, filled with fear. A figure appeared in the screening room and slowly approached. Then, suddenly, everything went black, and the screen was empty. At that moment, everything in the cinema became more vivid and terrifying. The ghosts from the film began to materialize in the real space. The ghosts floated around the group, making the atmosphere even more tense. The sound of footsteps echoed, yet no one could be seen. Cold whispers reached their ears. Emma was suddenly pulled toward the old screening room by an invisible force. She opened the door and saw a horrifying sight. The souls of the dead were sitting around the screen, their empty eyes fixed on the film. These souls seemed to be trying to communicate, but they couldn't. A sense of pain and helplessness filled the air. The group realized that in order to free these souls, they needed to finish the film. But this film was not just a regular piece of art, it was a gateway to the afterlife. The group started working together to complete the film. They decided to recreate the missing scenes by acting out situations from the past. Step by step, they restored the film's scenes, helping the souls find their freedom. As the film neared completion, the final scene appeared. Daniel Quinn, the former director of the cinema, appeared on the screen. He looked at the group with grateful yet sorrowful eyes. "Thank you for helping us," he said, his voice full of emotion. "At last, we can leave." With a deep sigh of relief, all the souls in the cinema were set free, and the cinema fell into a strange silence. The group stood still, staring at the screen one last time before leaving the cinema. As they walked out of the cinema, they noticed there was no trace of the cinema left. Before them was just an empty plot of land where the haunted cinema used to stand. They understood that everything had come to an end, and the souls had found peace. But in their hearts, the memories of the cinema and the souls would never fade. The group walked away, but in their eyes was a deep understanding of what had just transpired. They knew that sometimes, mysterious stories are not just tales for entertainment, but lessons about forgiveness and release. In the remote countryside, hidden behind misty forests, stood an old Victorian mansion known by locals as the House of Silent Crying. Abandoned for over a century, the house was shrouded in curses. No one dared to approach, even on the sunniest days. It was whispered that if you stayed silent at night, you'd hear mournful cries carried by the wind, even though no one was around. Ethan 20, Sophia, 19, Liam, 21, and Olivia, 19, a group of close friends fascinated by urban legends, decided to break the curse with an exploration trip. That night, fog blanketed the land. The old iron gate creaked as they pushed it open. Before them, the house appeared like a decaying giant corpse, its empty windows resembling hollow, dark eye sockets. "It's just an old house," Ethan tried to reassure, though his voice trembled. The main door creaked open on its own, inviting them inside. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. On the walls, torn portraits with slashed faces seemed to watch their every move. Sophia discovered a decaying diary atop a broken piano. The pages were stained with brown marks resembling dried blood. It was the journal of Margaret Holloway, the only daughter of Lord Holloway, the last owner of the house. The early entries were filled with joy, but gradually turned chaotic and desperate. Margaret wrote about the horror of hearing children's cries emanating from within the walls. She pleaded to escape this hell disguised as a home. The final page ended with a scrawled warning, "Don't let them touch you." As Sophia finished reading, a cold gust extinguished their flashlights. Upstairs, they found a heavy wooden door sealed with rusty chains and strange symbols carved deep into the wood. Around it, claw marks marked the walls. A child's scream echoed from within, freezing them in place. "We have to open it," Liam said, seemingly entranced. With a forceful strike, Ethan broke the lock. The door swung open, revealing a dark, cold room. In the center, an old cradle rocked gently without any wind. Inside lay a shattered porcelain doll, one eye missing, the other oozing a thick black liquid. When Sophia touched the cradle, anguished cries reverberated throughout the house, cries not belonging to any living being. They tried to flee but realized, the house had changed. Hallways stretched endlessly, walls repeated like a maze. Childlike shadows crawled under tables, brushing past their legs. In mirrors, they no longer saw their reflections, only distorted faces with gaping mouths, silently weeping. Olivia was dragged into the darkness. When they found her, her eyes were vacant, mouth whispering incessantly, "Stay with us, forever." Liam and Ethan tried to rouse her, but to no avail. In a decaying library, they uncovered ancient documents revealing that Lord Holloway had performed dark rituals, using orphans in ceremonies to achieve immortality. The children's souls were trapped within the house, unable to move on. Sophia realized that to free the souls, a redemption ritual was needed, requiring the sacrifice of a living person. Determined, Sophia chose to sacrifice herself to release the trapped souls. She entered the sealed room, the door closing behind her. Immediately, the house began to tremble, the cries turning into children's laughter. Ethan and Liam escaped as the house collapsed behind them. On the old grounds, only a field of wildflowers remained. Yet sometimes, amidst the mist, one could still hear children's laughter echoing.